Hi and welcome everybody. My name is Coach Karen and we are here today with the Head to Toe Healing Live, brought to you by Dr. Kevin Reese and our team in the room here. I'll be introducing them in just a moment. With Head to Toe Healing, just to give you a background if you're brand new joining us today, Dr. Reese has put together a new method of healing that connects three methods, macro methods of the body. It's nutrition, muscular skeletal support, and also mindfulness. And today I have with me three of our coaches. They're going to give you insights on how head to toe healing and their different modalities help the body get in a position where it can heal itself the way it was divinely designed. So today, first off, if you could just say hello, Coach Sean. He's our posture expert.
Hello.
And we are here. We also have Coach Ryan, who's our nutrition expert, and
Hello,
then
hello, hello.
and Coach Gingy, who's our mindfulness expert.
Hello, everybody.
So first off, before we get started, if you have any questions for our team, please put them in the comments. We would love to hear from you. And then we're going to round robin around the room and get the perspective of each of the modalities. So that way we can get your questions answered in the best way possible. But this past week, Dr. Reese released a reel, and it was about the gallbladder and gallstones. And a lot of people were interested in what he had to say because they've been in
Hi
position.
and welcome
Everybody. My name is, we've been, I'm sorry.
Okay, won't happen again.
Thank you. In the background, we have Coach Levi. He helps us on the technical side of things. So thanks, Levi, for looking out for us. So Dr. Reese put out a reel this week, which was about the gallbladder. And a lot of people have experienced issues where all of a sudden they're in extreme pain, they're running to urgent care, and they don't know why. And then they find out that they have gallstones in their body. And we had so many people reach out to us asking, what do I do? How do I address this? Do I have to have my gallbladder removed? I already had it removed. What do I do? So I'm going to go around the room. I'm going to start with Coach Sean, who's our posture expert, and ask him, how does the muscular skeletal system have an impact when somebody is dealing with gallstones or a gallbladder flare?
Thank you, Karen. So, although it's not a direct impact, like obviously more nutritional, the body is comprised of a bunch of pipes and strings. Strings meaning the nervous system, pipes meaning the circulatory system, so lymphatic, bloodstream, such like that. And when those have kinks in them, when they get kinks in them, nutrients or lymph, the body's sewage system is not able to drain out, or nutrients is not able to get to certain areas. And even more so, how posture can affect is your body's alignment can affect how you balance or how you sit on certain organs. And so this gallbladder situation could be in large part due to how the spine is bending and how the weight is falling on certain organs can cause certain stress. And so we always want to consider that. It's always just head to toe and applying the postural aspect, I think is key always, even though it doesn't directly impact, it can. It can cause some type of influence, and you want to make sure you check into that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Coach Gingy, what about you? What about the mind? How does that impact the gallbladder or when somebody has a flare of some sort and they're wanting answers?
Yeah, so from the mindfulness perspective, one of the biggest things to note first is that the way the doctors look at the gallbladder is as if it has no real purpose or function in the body. So they're happy to just remove it. And if you allow that belief then you lead to things like surgeries and, other acute remedies, if you will, for the gallbladder issues. And so we would first want to look at that and assess those beliefs, because if you do believe that, well, then you're predetermined, basically. You're predisposed to going down that route if you believe the gallbladder has no real purpose. Secondarily, there are traumas and there are stressors and there are things that we can hold on to mentally and emotionally that, because of the mind-body connection through the mind to the nervous system to the muscles and tissues, that could very easily have a mental or emotional problem show up in the body, in the gallbladder, or anywhere else. So, we want to get you in the head to toe healing program just to take a good look at all three macros and figure out what we got to do to help you out.
Coach Ryan, what about you? What about the nutritional side? Is there any things people can do to support their gallbladder in a different way, so that way maybe they don't have this issue?
Well, the first thing that I think people should realize or understand, most of them do already, that the gallbladder is a passive organ. It's not an active organ. It basically just holds bile that's made in the liver. So the liver is the active organ there. Whatever problem there is in the gallbladder is really a liver problem. So if they have stones right now, I'm reading some of the comments. If they have stones right now, or they have pain right now, if you're in a gallbladder attack and you're ready to go to the hospital, the easiest, the most effective thing that I'm aware of to stop that pain is just to simply stop eating for 2 to 3 days. That's not going to fix the problem forever, but it should almost always. In fact, in every case that I'm aware, it always has worked. It should get rid of the attack immediately. And then you still have to make changes to support the liver. The liver needs a ton of nutrients. All the organs need a lot of nutrients, but the liver especially. So we do that in our program. We use all 90 essential nutrients, just matter of course. But we also do digestive support, because this is a digestive function. That bile has lots of functions. One of them is to get rid of toxins. Another one is to break down fats in the intestine. So we support the rest of the digestive system to make sure the whole thing is working smoothly before we get on the 90 essential nutrients. And if there is stones there, like this lady asking in the comments, then in 3 or 4 months, depending on the state of the person, we would do a liver flush, which would actually flush out the liver and the gallbladder, because the gallbladder is underneath it, flushes them both out. Any stones and other junk and even parasites like flukes, all that stuff can come rushing out with the flush. But we've got to get the body strong enough to handle that flush first, because it's a very tough process on the body. And other than that, there's some major dietary things. I mean, low-fat diets can cause it, because you actually need fat to stimulate bile release. So you can have impaired bile flow on a low-fat diet, fat-restricted diet. But on the other side of the coin, the high-fat diet can cause gallstones as well, because now the bile, which is made of cholesterol, but not all cholesterol, when you're on a high-fat diet, there's even more cholesterol in the bile, and that's one of the leading theories as to why stones actually form in the first place. And of course, a high sugar diet basically does the same thing, because it forces the liver to convert that extra sugar into fat. And so there's more fat in the bile as well. And the liver is under more stress itself in that situation. So high sugar, high fat, and low fat are all the 3 main dietary things to not do if you want to have a healthy liver and consequently healthy gallbladder.
Thank you for that. That's awesome. One person had a question. What about fatty liver? And if their liver, part of their liver was removed, can the liver grow back?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, it is.
The liver can grow back. It's pretty interesting. It can grow back even if it's been taken out by 90%. And some reports say even more than that. So it's eager to grow back. And fatty liver is a nutrient deficiency. I just mentioned that when you have too much sugar and your body can't process that sugar, because it needs nutrients to process that sugar, like to get it into cells. If it can't do that, now you've got high blood sugar. The first thing the body does is excavate that sugar into the liver, and the liver's job is to turn it into fat. First, it'll turn it into glycogen, which is the storage form of sugar, but you can't do very much of that. So it turns the rest of it into fat. It'll start stuffing that into fat cells until the fat cells run out of room. These could be fat cells all throughout the body. Then it starts stuffing it into organs, because organs are also made of fat, basically. The liver is just one of those organs that can get stuffed up with fat, but all the other organs can as well. You can have fatty kidneys, fatty lungs, fatty heart. People don't talk about those as often, but if you have fatty liver, you almost certainly have at least one other fatty organ. It's going to try and distribute it as evenly as it can. So it is a nutrient deficiency problem. A lot of people will blame this purely on sugar, but it's not sugar's fault. If you have excess sugar, sure, it exacerbates the problem, but it's really fundamentally a nutrient deficiency problem that we're not able to handle the sugar or process the sugar. And a lot of those same nutrients are needed for liver health. So fatty liver is reversible. It requires a bunch of nutrients to do so. And it may require diet modification depending on what the person is currently eating.
Thank you for that. We had a question here. This came in this past week. This lady has a 13-year-old daughter, and the daughter is starting to develop bunions on her right foot. What should she do? Should she go to the chiropractor? Should she do something different? Does it have what, Coach Sean, how would posture affect somebody starting to get a bunion at such a young age?
Well, it's mostly due to the shoes that people are wearing, whether it's heels or loafers or just shoes that have a narrow front part of the shoe. It's squeezing the toes together and it's making the weight fall in that certain position over and over again. So when they take their shoes off, it's going to continue that instability. And so what we have to do, we have to correct what they're wearing, the shoes that they're wearing, but also correct the posture all the way up. It's all connected. And so we normally just handle this in the membership itself, doing the postural classes because an imbalance in the foot could be affecting the knees and then to the pelvis and then to the shoulders. And so we have to essentially reverse all of those issues that are caused in order to then reverse the issue at the feet. So it's a two-part approach. But yeah, mainly it starts with the shoes. Starts with the shoes, and then we get into the posture work to correct all of the kinks that it caused.
Could it also be the way that the individual is walking to affect how their feet are hitting the ground, perhaps?
Yeah, but it's still like bunions are a problem of the modern society, shoe wearers, socks even. And when you're constantly walking and it's like this, it's going to try to save itself. That's what causes the extra bone growth. But also it's just your body's trying to compensate for a suboptimal posture, basically. It's trying to be comfortable in shoes. We're not supposed to be comfortable in these narrow shoes. And so that's a little bit of why that issue is developing in the first place. Babies wearing shoes, we're wearing shoes all the time now. Um, and we need time to walk barefoot to kind of, space out our toes and allow us to walk in that position more than we're walking in the position that we are in when we have shoes on, basically. So it's mostly a shoe problem at the end of the day.
Thank you for that. We had another question here, looping back to the gallstone and gallbladder question. This would be for Coach Ryan. How long does it typically take to turn around getting rid of gallstones?
Takes as long as you need to get healthy enough to do the liver flush. And I can't give an exact age for that. Normally if you're under 18 years old or you're more than like 70 years old, I'm going to be really skeptical about doing the flush. But still, you could be a 45-year-old person who's extremely frail and unwell, right? It might take you 5 or 6 months for us both to judge that you're healthy enough to do it. And you might be 75 and in awesome shape other than this one problem and be capable to do a liver flush. It's just something we've got to use a little bit of judgment on. But typically, I say 3 months on all 90 essential nutrients first, which really means 4 months into the program because I start almost everyone on a digestion protocol first for the first month. And if you have a gallbladder problem or liver problem, that's a 100% certainty. We'll be doing a digestion protocol first. So 4 months.
Thank you. Someone else was mentioning in the comments saying that lemon water and cayenne pepper works phenomenal on an empty stomach for that. What's your opinion on that, Coach Ryan?
Sure. Apple cider vinegar as well. Salt. Yeah. Those things will all help. And they may even begin to dissolve the stones, but we still have to turn around the problem of why they're there in the first place. And it's not going to dissolve all of them, especially with the gallstones, because I don't know the exact percentage, but the vast majority of them, there has to be a lot more stones in the liver than there is in the gallbladder itself. So if you can see, let's say four penny-sized stones in the gallbladder, you should assume there's like 40 or 400 in the liver. It's best to just
Thank
flush
you.
them out. Just get rid of them.
Thank you. And then one person was asking if Medicare covers this type of nutrition or blood work. Maybe Ryan, you might be the best to answer that one.
Well, I think they should. It's weird that they don't tend to cover anything holistic because it would cost insurance companies a lot less, right? The price of a gallbladder surgery, I'm not sure what it is. We can get a fact checker on this, but it has to be more than $10,000. Whereas, let's go on the high end. I'm going to overestimate here and say it was $300 a month for supplements for each of those 4 months. You're looking at $1,200 plus a liver flush. Call it another $200, $1,400 all in, and that's way overestimating. Most people, it's not going to cost anything near that. But compared to the cost of a surgery, let's see if Google will give me a quick answer here and if it sounds realistic. In the USA can range from 3,000 to 20,000. Now I'm doubting that 3,000 number because a colonoscopy tends to cost about $5,000. So I don't know what budget hospital is doing it for 3,000. But 20,000 sounds more realistic. Let's call it 10,000 in the middle. So it'd be roughly 10 times cheaper for insurance to do it naturally, but they just don't. They just don't because of the medical monopoly. And of course, anyone who doesn't understand that should read the Red Book by Dr. Rees. Medical Monopoly is what it's called. Because they name things diseases in order for insurance to pay them. That's why there's so many different diseases and disease names. And that's why obesity is called a disease and alcoholism is called a disease and all these things. OCD and ADHD, these things are only called diseases so that insurance can pay for them. But the catch is they only pay for medical treatment. And medical treatment, by and large, means drugs, tests, and surgeries, with the exception of psychotherapy. So if you don't fall into the medical cartel method of treatment, then you also don't fall into the insurability. They won't insure you if you're not a medical treatment. And this, using vitamins and minerals and amino acids and essential fatty acids and a liver flush, that's not considered medical treatment. It would be if doctors did it, but they seem to have no interest in it. They would rather cut your gallbladder out than return it to function.
Thank you. And just, well, you had mentioned something earlier about starting people on a gut protocol. That might be another topic that would be good for us to go around the room with. It seems like so many people have, whether it be constipation, diarrhea, belching, acid reflux, all kinds of issues like that. So, Coach Sean, would you please share why or how posture alignment therapy can help support somebody that may have gut issues and help them turn things around?
Yeah, that actually hits home for me because that's what brought me to this program. And for the life of me, I did not understand how posture could be affecting my gut. But looking deeper into it, how your body falls, how you breathe, how anything essentially happens, all of that relies on how your body uh, aligns posturally. And so I had what was called sway back, and essentially my ribs were falling in on my intestine, and my pelvis was essentially leaning upward into it. So it's just like a squeeze from the top and the bottom onto my intestines, not giving it enough space, but also stretching some points of it. And I remember I even got a surgery, and my pelvis was tilted up so high that it was pushing my intestines into my upper ribs. Like they saw my intestines where they weren't supposed to be. And so that basically says like posture, it's so simple, but quite literally it pushes and it can move anything around at once. um, Based on that position. And so what you want to do is again, just going into the classes and correcting the body full out and not just focusing on, oh, I have stomach issues, so let me just focus on my stomach. No, everything is balanced on top of each other, and you need an adequate posture to have adequate flow in the body. And that includes gut motility. Your gut, it relies on gravity, it relies on how you're aligned in order to move food all throughout your system. And so if that's not aligned properly, then of course you're going to ferment foods where they're not supposed to be fermented, or impinge certain nerves that stop the body's ability to communicate organ to organ. So things like that. It's a simple approach. Just get back into alignment, but just realize that posture still has a hand in every single disease that we list.
Thank you for sharing that. Coach Gingy, from your perspective, from a mindfulness perspective, how does the mind interact with the gut?
This is one of my favorite things to talk about because it's very interesting. Your mind, your brain, it doesn't have a way to experience the outside world, so it connects to the nervous system, which gets into our five senses. And the nervous system, through the five senses, views the outside world in one of two different ways. Number one, it's safe, or number two, it's dangerous. And so if you see anything in the outside world as unsafe, then it can trigger your nervous system to go into the sympathetic mode. We'll call it the sympathetic nervous system. And that entire part of the nervous system redirects blood flow and nutrients and stuff away from digestion. It can actually cause malabsorption. It can cause SIBO. It can cause all kinds of, massively problematic issues within the gut. Not to mention if you're very stressed out and you've got worries and stuff, like your mind doesn't know the difference between, uh-oh, there's a bear chasing me and my boss just yelled at me. So those are the same type of emotional and neurological, nervous system responses to an outside experience. And so if you're having these chronic stressors, if you're having these chronic, worries and just, you know, negative experiences out in the world, everything from getting cut off on the way to work, or getting yelled at work, or getting home and getting yelled at, or failing this one thing, or whatever it is, whatever your thoughts are that are creating this stress will impact the nervous system and thus digestion directly, as well as increase other chemicals like cortisol, adrenaline, and those need to be worked out of the body too. Which, guess what? Anything that's toxic to the body gets dumped in through, I think it's the liver and the gallbladder, into the digestive system to get flushed out. The whole lymphatic system, like Sean was talking about, needs to drain in there and get. So if that system, if you're stressed and that system isn't operational, then all of those things become very problematic. So that's why head to toe healing is awesome, because it works with the mind and the nutrition, which is important, and the posture to solve that entire complex from happening.
Thank you for sharing that. Coach Ryan, with your perspective on nutrition, how does that support the body to help us get to the root causes of what's happening with the gut?
With nutrition?
With nutrition, yep.
Well, I would put digestion in the nutrition category, even though it's a little bit different. I mean, we can mess up our digestion, not always with nutrient deficiencies. It's possible to have nutrient deficiencies that cause a digestion problem, but usually we cause it. We cause it with food, processed foods, lack of salt. It's one big thing when healthy people try to be healthy. They tend to not use enough salt, and you need salt to make stomach acid. Enzymes is another one. Sorry, you phrased the question a little bit strangely to set me up for this, but I'm mostly worried about nutrient deficiencies when it comes to diseases. But in the case of digestive problems, again, they're usually caused by foods, or like Gingy said, your mind. This whole fast-paced lifestyle, high-stress lifestyle that we've come up with is antithetical to good digestion. And like Coach Sean said, our whole nervous system can push around all your digestive organs very easily. They're more or less just free floating there. They're not anchored to anything, right? And everyone has a posture problem now, especially the tech neck now. But most of us are chronic sitters, and that impacts it as well. But there's lots of things to take into consideration. But the main ones would be having strong stomach acid function. Your stomach acid needs to be strong enough to break things down. Having enough enzymes there to do the job, which we need nutrients for our pancreas to make those enzymes. But when we're a society that eats almost entirely cooked food almost all the time, either cooking or processed, both destroy enzymes. So we naturally produce less enzymes. Enzymes are what help to digest the foods in the intestine there. Well, all throughout, we've got enzymes in our mouth, we've got enzymes in the stomach, enzymes all throughout the digestive tract that help to break things down. But we naturally produce less as we get older, and we're supposed to have enzymes come in food as well. So we're supposed to make it and have enzymes in food, but we've cut off that second source largely because most people eat almost all cooked or processed foods almost all the time. So enzymes, stomach acid, and probiotics. And I think probiotics are a lot more well known and well talked about, but if you don't have a good environment for them in your intestine, then the balance will be off. You'll have lots of bad guys and not enough good guys, or people who use antibiotics. You might have a lack of both. And then, of course, once you mess up that balance, the bad guys can really grow out of control. And even things that are normally in the gut, like E. coli, can become very, very, very problematic, right? Can turn into pathogens, even though they're normally supposed to be there. But anyways, this is not really nutrition in the sense of, you need these specific nutrients to do all this, because these things are not considered essential nutrients. Enzymes, probiotics, they're not considered essential, but you might as well, because without those ingredients, the whole thing's not going to work that properly. And probiotics, lastly, need to eat real food. Fiber and starch are basically food for probiotics or prebiotics, as the sales pitch would say. But if you're not eating real foods with fiber and starch in them, then your good bacteria is not really going to survive very well.
Thank you for that. Another question that came up, what happens if you have uric acid in your blood? This question's directed at you, Ryan.
Yeah, well, uric acid is a breakdown product from food, so it's supposed to be there. You would have too much if your kidney's not doing a good enough job, which would most likely be a nutrient deficiency. And when I say nutrient deficiency, it almost always means multiple nutrients, right? So it's not going to be just, it's a vitamin B6 deficiency. It's probably not. It's probably numerous.
Thank you. For those people that are just joining in with us, we're talking about head to toe healing, Dr. Reese's methodology about aligning the body with nutrition, posture, and also mindfulness therapy. So with that, if it's something that looks intriguing to you and you might want to go down a different route, if you're not getting the answers you're looking for with the regular system, certainly send us a DM or go to drkevinreese.com to get some more information. We have a lot of educational materials on our website, as well as information about getting started and how you can get in contact with us so we can talk one-on-one with you about what's happening with your body and what issues you're trying to overcome. We would love to hear from you. But let's get back to our questions. We have another question here. How long does it take to reverse insulin resistance with diabetes? And this would be for Coach Ryan.
It can be very fast. and it used to be even faster. And I paused there because, you know, do I really want to go into it? No, but it used to be even faster. I do believe that EMF, the fact that everyone carries a computer in their or microwave in their pocket now, which wasn't always the case when I started this business, and everyone's surrounded by it, everyone has Wi-Fi and all this stuff. I do believe that's the reason why it has become more difficult, even though it's still a nutrient deficiency. The EMF impacts our blood cells' ability to transport those nutrients to the cells. So, and they can create diabetes just with EMF in animals, by the way. And there's more single case studies in the EMF realm in diabetes. Just want to say that it used to be a lot easier. So my records that I've seen, my record is 4 days that I've ever seen it reversed with permission from her doctor, where she was able to get off her diabetes meds and blood pressure meds at the same time, 4 days after starting the program. And that has to be from nutrients alone, because that's not long enough for food changes to make much of a difference. Right? You can't just go, you know, vegan or carnivore and then 4 days later have a major transformation like that. So it's a nutrient thing. I've also seen it plenty of times in 1 week or 2 weeks, but yeah, very frankly, in the last 4 or 5 years, I expect it to take longer now. The increase in specifically in microwave radiation, but yeah, these phones in everyone's pockets and sleeping beside the bed with them, and it has begun to take longer. There are many, many different nutrients involved. You know, I know sometimes we say there's two major ones, but there's tons of nutrients involved in blood sugar. Once all those are in there, your body should be able to digest sugar, get it into the cells, burn it for energy, all efficiently without having too much insulin there and without overburdening the liver with excess.
Thank you very much for that answer. We had another question. This is directed towards Coach Gingy and mindfulness. How do you reset your nervous system when it's been in the fight or flight mode for such a long time?
So, head to toe healing. The inner child work that Dr. Reese lays out is incredibly effective, because fundamentally what it is an interruption to the patterns that got you in the chronic stress state in the first place. So there's a cycle that's happening psychologically. In order to have your sympathetic nervous system activated, there are ways that you're looking at the world that are causing a stress response. There are beliefs that you're taking in and embodying that are stressful. And so whatever the stressors are in your life that may now not seem like really that much stress, they could still be mildly triggering your nervous system to stay in the sympathetic state. So it's like an overworked muscle. And that's kind of the way that you'd want to look at it, because if you develop new practices that allow you to relax more than you get elevated, then you'll be activating more so of the parasympathetic, the rest and digest mode, the rest and recovery mode. And that will allow you to do, you know, all of the nutritional stuff and allow muscles to relax and like the whole works from there. You know, but just to throw a couple of very simple, you know, I'll say band-aids, because what you really need is the whole package, the whole head to toe healing model. But if you're in a pinch or something and you're really stressed out and you can't bring yourself down from it, you could take a hot bath. You can go out and ground, sit on the ground in nature, take some deep breathing. Dr. Reese in his cheat code book has a bunch of different methods that you could use, breathing exercises and things like that, that would really help you just able to de-escalate down to a place where you're not so activated sympathetically. So that's what I would recommend, you know, or one of the reasons why we pray, and a lot of people pray before food or give thanks before food, is because prayer and gratitude activates the parasympathetic nervous system as well, which sets up your body to be able to digest and things like that. So, you know, get the cheat code, get the reverse the cause book, book a call with one of us, and we can help you figure that out, because reducing the stress is the easy part, to be honest. It's in then going through life being untriggerable or just calm and relaxed and seeing life in a different way, developing new practices and habits. That's where most of the work is. But once you switch over, you don't even have to think about it anymore. You're just People are like, wow, why are you so calm right now? I don't know. That's just the way I am now. And that's the state we want to get everybody to.
Thank you for that. Actually, one of the comments on Facebook today was from one of our members. She's in there and she says, I have to give a shout out to Coach Gingy. Your classes have really helped me minimize my inner child. Your box breathing has really been helpful in resetting my nervous system after 2 years of anxiety and chaotic chatter in my brain. Thank you so much.
Perfect. I love hearing stuff like that because it's 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 really simple stuff that most times, like we were talking about today in the class, most times the simple stuff gets overlooked or underestimated. But if you really double down and you do the simple things, then they become like this wave of momentum, this tidal wave that changes everything in your life. It's not about doing everything all at once, it's about pacing yourself. And so the students that are in here, the people that are in the program, and they're coming to the classes and they're doing the work and they're doing the little changes, they're the ones that are like, wow, I feel great now. Oh, wow, I'm not stressed out. Oh, wow, my back feels better. Oh, and all this stuff just starts melting away because they created a mindset. Number one, having it be possible that they can heal. Like that's fundamentally the biggest thing. People don't really die from diseases and stuff like that anymore. They die because they don't get their mind oriented towards a solution. Once they have got that solution, well, then it just takes practice. You got to follow it all the way through. You got to walk the walk. You got to look around until you find someone that says, hey, I can help you, and try their model out. And if it works, keep going. If it's not working, pivot.
Thank you for that. We had another question from Debbie. Debbie says on here, one, how can I get your information? Debbie, you need to just go to drkevinreese.com. We have a lot of educational materials on our website. The ability to get started, there's a section that you can click on that says get started. Our testimonials are on there. You can hear about all kinds of people that have been reversing chronic conditions and getting lots of improvement, getting to the root causes, getting that symptom score that we identify through our head to toe analysis, wherever their starting point is, getting that to come down over the months as they participate with us. It's pretty incredible. But she also had another question about osteoporosis. Could you share information, Coach Ryan, about nutrients or how one would address that condition?
Well, yes, but I would also like to comment on the nervous system one, if I'm permitted.
Oh, go for it.
Your nervous system also needs tons of nutrients, and stress itself depletes many nutrients. So, in addition to doing mindfulness training, and this is one of the things that's so good about head to toe healing, and why I like being involved with this program, is because nutrients is part of it. It's a big part of it. But if you combine that with mindfulness and you stop those adrenaline spikes, you can actually fully fix this problem, right? But you do have to remember that just fixing the mind will not put back those nutrients that were depleted by the adrenal exhaustion, basically. So there's a bunch of those nutrients. I will name two. People like it when we name them. But anytime I name nutrients, I got to say, don't just go out and buy these nutrients. There's 90 essential nutrients. So if you can point to one or two or three or four that are used in this specific thing, that doesn't mean that taking them is going to, fix your liver or whatever it is, just because it's majorly implicated in the liver. Anyways, vitamin C is one of the biggest ones that's depleted when you are in stress. So topping that up for me is very, very important in the program. Lots of people find themselves catastrophically, massively low on vitamin C, and that'll never show up in a blood test. I won't go into the details on how we know and how we top them up and all this stuff, but it's a pretty fun thing to do. And the other one is pantothenic acid, vitamin B5. It's long been known in the alternative world as the anti-stress vitamin. And those are only two. They're definitely not the only two. And taking only those two is probably not going to do much. And the doses have to be worked out based on you, who you are, and your body weight and all that stuff. I'm just saying that there are definitely nutrients involved. Your next one was about osteoporosis, right?
That's correct.
Well, osteoporosis is typically pretty easy to reverse, actually. I've even seen a lot of people reverse it who have not fully committed to our program, like getting off all the bad foods and all that stuff. It is mostly just nutrient deficiency. I couldn't name all the nutrients, but I would call it the calcium group. Not just calcium, but all of its cofactors as well. And there are a lot of them. But also, I think the one thing worth mentioning, because it's not talked about a lot or enough, is protein deficiency as well. Your bones are largely made of protein. They do need minerals, and they also need vitamins to be able to absorb those minerals and put them into the bones and so on. But a lot of people are under eating, especially women. Both men and women do get osteoporosis here, but I'm saying that the women make it harder on themselves with years of chronic dieting, especially when they're not even eating enough calories to support their metabolism. And often, they're trying to lose weight, so they drop their calories, and then they don't lose weight, so they drop it even further. And they might come along 10 or 20 years later and meet people like us, and we want to reverse that. I'm just saying that under eating is going to be one of the major causes here, especially in dieting. So it's a double whammy. It slows down your metabolism, and now you don't have enough raw materials to rebuild the bones.
Thank you for that.
But it is
There's
fully reversible. It's 100% reversible, and it doesn't take that long. Several months, but not years.
That's awesome. What are some signs that people start noticing without going to the system to get a test, noticing that it's turning around? Is it just feeling more density in their bone structure or something else?
So they're probably just going to feel stronger. A lot of it is based on bone density tests, by the way, which I think are a pretty huge scam on their own. Apparently, ultrasound can do just as good of a job as the DEXA scan, but it can be a scam because it can also, if you have water retention or edema, that it can confuse that for bone density. And this isn't my specialty or anything. It's just something I find interesting that I bet there's millions upon millions of people who have been falsely diagnosed with osteoporosis just because the DEXA scan sucks and exposes you to even more radiation. Hey, you should just feel stronger. The only way to really confirm it is with the same type of scan that you did in the first place. But you should feel less at risk. And obviously, if you are in the stage of severe osteoporosis where you're breaking bones here and there, you bump your pelvis on the coffee table and it breaks, those things should stop happening, basically. But most of the time there's pain associated with it, achiness and pain and lack of mobility in general, and all that stuff should start to improve.
Thank you for that. And for those just tuning in, or maybe you've been watching the whole live, what a lot of our coaches are talking about are symptoms that the body is telling us is going on. So similar to when your check engine light goes on your car and it says, take me to the mechanic, find out what's going on. When we do a head to toe analysis with Dr. Reese for you, we get a symptom score. It ranges from 0 to 60. And the higher the score, it's not necessarily better. It's basically the foundation or your baseline of where you're starting. And what it is the goal to get that symptom score to come down. So as you participate in our head to toe healing membership, what we find is our members' symptom score goes down each month and they start to improve. So unlike the regular system, when you go and you have a doctor look at maybe your knee or your ear or your hip that's bugging you, we look at the whole picture, the whole body, and get that symptom score, and then work together to get to the root causes of what's going on with your body. So that way we can approach it holistically from a head to toe healing perspective with mindfulness training, posture alignment therapy, supporting the musculoskeletal system, and also nutrition. So if you're curious about that and want to get started or get more information just to see if it's for you, go to drkevinreese.com and explore our website, and then you can get in touch with us or send us a DM and we'd be happy to talk with you. But back to our questions, there was another question that came up. Someone in the chat has endometriosis, and she's wondering if that's something that could be reversed, and if you had any tips on that. I'll start with Coach Sean. Do you have any insights or perspective on the posture aspect of endometriosis?
Well, yeah, it all starts in the pelvis, and whenever the pelvis is misaligned, the rest of the body it's kind of like that girdle of life. The rest of the body just kind of follows through. And so I would always say pay attention to the pelvis, because that's where it's going to start. And that same topic that I went into before, how your body flows, how the systems in your body flows, everything is impacted by posture. And so that could be what the start of that condition is, a postural dysfunction. Don't neglect the posture.
Thank you for that. Coach Gingy, any insights or perspective from the mindfulness realm on endometriosis?
Absolutely. So some of the common things that happens is people, especially women, will experience depression and anxiety and things like that because of this. And that usually stems back to, you know, number one, the initial traumatic events that are happening, the loss of mobility and things like that. But then also, shifting the way that they think about themselves. A lot of people will get stuck on this image of who they are and their relationship to other people and in the world in general, and they'll kind of get stuck in that. And then all of a sudden, they're not able to do these things, or they can't be this type of person, and their imagination starts to run away with themselves. And that can cause all types of mental and emotional turmoil for the person. And I would be working on my mindset every day, trying to align it to a solution. And if somebody's telling me, well, this is a permanent thing and there's no cure, if you will, that's what most doctors will tell you, then I would be looking around for the person that says, hey, I can help. Hey, I have a solution. Or hey, this is the underlying pathology or the cause of the disease. So we want to get to the root cause of everything and reverse that. And that's the biggest thing. If you're just going to mask the symptoms and deal with the symptoms and start taking, meds and other things, that's only going to be able to do so much at the surface level. So we really want to get down to the underlying issues. And maybe there was a subconscious type of process that was going on that led to the endometriosis. Maybe there were some practices that you thought were healthy, but were actually not so healthy for you. And so there's a lot of things and a lot of ways that you can get yourself into these situations. But if you have it now, then we would want you to get in and do the symptom score, and we'd want to work on alleviating or working with whatever is going on that's causing those symptoms. And it's going to be one or two or three of the macros that we do here: the mindfulness, the posture, and the nutrition. And you get all of those in one fell swoop, then I can easily see how that would start shifting things pretty quickly. So yeah, I don't know exactly until I talk with somebody how their mental activity is impacting their health, but you better believe it. Every single person has mental thoughts behind why they're doing what they're doing, and they can and how to get out of it, basically. So
Thank you very much for that. Coach Ryan, how would you approach this topic?
Well, endometriosis and all female problems are all systemic problems. So there's multiple causes, at least in terms of multiple nutrient causes, multiple nutrient deficiencies. Most of the time, there is a history of pharmaceutical drug use, common things, birth control, antibiotics, over-the-counter painkillers, stuff like that. Almost always, in almost every case. It's not guaranteed, but that's a contributor to me in the majority of cases. And bad food choices, obviously, of course. Now, a lot of people, once they do, especially a lot of women, they're famous for dieting. They get a health problem and they try the latest diets, whatever they are. So many times we do get women who are eating reasonably well, maybe not perfect according to our guidelines, but they're not eating Pop-Tarts and Doritos and Pepsi all day, basically. They're trying to eat healthy. Well, if you're doing that, then you're a step ahead already, because this person asking, they say they're tight on money too. Well, that would be the number one top priority, is if you I'm going to put this in quotes here, and I don't mean to be rude, but if you cannot afford a program to help you, the minimum that you should do is put 100% attention to eating literally 100% real foods. And to me, that would include many raw foods as well, especially apple cider vinegar and raw honey and even raw liver in the form of pate, things that are going to give you more undisturbed nutrients, because cooked foods will destroy a lot of nutrients. Since I said that earlier, I don't mean that I want to clarify it. We shouldn't eat 100% raw. There's some benefits to cooking certain things that could be a long conversation. I'm just saying, if you were broke, you're having money trouble at all, and the only thing that you can do, I have to put that in quotes again, because a lot of nutrients are quite cheap, and wasting years trying to do this by yourself, trying to figure this out, as opposed to paying a program like us that will help you and most likely save you lots of money and time from doing it incorrectly. Nonetheless, if you can't do those things, food should be your focus. 100% real foods, zero processed foods, clean water, using plenty of salt or using enough salt be your bare minimum. And I can't give you a nutritional protocol here because the nutritional protocol is always based on the person. Almost always, I would start a person with endometriosis, I would start them on a gut rescue protocol, digestion protocol for the first month, and then move them onto something that's going to support all their organs and hormones in general without it being a specific like endometriosis protocol. It would basically be a soft tissue protocol is what we would call it within the membership. And we'd modify it. Chances are this person would need a lot of iodine. Chances are the same person will also react to iodine if they don't have all the other nutrients there present. But there's going to be a lot of nutrient deficiencies. If you can't afford, again in quotes there, if you can't afford much more, your focus has to be on the foods. Eat 100% clean. Don't overthink it. Have protein, fat, and carbs at every meal. Balanced, omnivorous, and of course, get off the poor four foods: gluten, oil, fried, and fake. 100%.
Thank you for that. There's another question on here. Somebody that was diagnosed with PE, pulmonary embolism, about 4 months ago, currently on blood thinners, and wondering, is there anything that they can do naturally to loosen a clot? I think that might be best addressed by Coach Ryan for starters.
Yeah, there are a lot of nutrients, and I know it's annoying to hear me say it, and it was annoying for me before I understood this, when I heard people saying, oh yeah, there's a bunch of nutrients that do this. Because a lot of nutrients have multiple functions. Well, they all have multiple functions except for one nutrient. All of them have multiple functions, and many of those functions overlap. So there are a bunch of different nutrients that are involved in blood viscosity, either in clotting it or in allowing it to flow properly. So it basically is just a nutrient deficiency. And of course, just like almost always, it's exacerbated by processed foods for various reasons. Not going to go all the way into it, but processed foods and nutrient deficiencies will cause blood viscosity problems. Either it will be too thin, or more likely, it'll be too prone to clotting. So I wouldn't pick out individual nutrients. I would not go to the store and buy individual nutrients. I would get on all 90 essential nutrients, because this actually is a life-threatening thing here: pulmonary embolism, blood clots in the lungs. This is not something you want to wing it yourself. I'm sure you've heard of some things that can help, and you may have already purchased some of those things, and that's totally fine. I'm talking things that you would see on a standard Instagram post, like garlic or nattokinase. These are fine. And if you've already purchased some of these, then that's great. But in reality, your body needs a whole large group of nutrients to manage its blood viscosity properly. And they all have cofactors too. This is why we don't fractionate it. That's what we call it. You don't break it up. We use all 90, and then we boost certain ones if we need to. And in this case, there are a few that we could boost. And you could use extra garlic and nattokinase and stuff like that. But the baseline is far more important.
Thank you for that. Another question that came in today was from Mark. How do you address fatigue? I'm going to start with Coach Sean on a posture perspective. How would somebody address fatigue?
I'll just go from my perspective of muscle fatigue. Uh, Mainly I would say that I'm not too sure, honestly. With fatigue, I would feel like it's more stemming in the nutritional category. Now, if we were saying like fatigue as in like not even fatigue, but like some type of pain, that's when it would be more associated with how you're moving your body. But I can't comment too much into fatigue.
Would posture alignment therapy help relax someone's body a little bit more if they were experiencing fatigue and stress?
Well, I mean, fatigue would just be like the muscles can't do anymore. And so, in terms of that, I would say give the muscles what they're asking for, rest. But I wouldn't like if you're fatigued, then I would say like you've moved enough. But if pain couples fatigue, then that means that you've moved enough in the wrong function, essentially. And so that to me is where postural therapy would come into play. Not so much with fatigue itself. I mean, unless you're attending one of my classes, then it'll be a little different. It'll be a good type of fatigue. You know, you did what you're supposed to do, and your muscles need the rest so they can build back up even stronger and also pull those bones into the correct position to make function more optimal for the body. So, and one more thing, I don't mean to jump around, but I do want to circle back to the endometriosis because one thing I would say, if you're having skepticism of endometriosis or you think that posture doesn't have a say, or you don't know how posture has an influence in endometriosis, I'd recommend taking pictures of yourself. Look at your back. Most of endometriosis cases comes from posterior pelvic tilt, meaning the pelvis is leaning up in the front and down in the back. Now that's like if you pull a string that's curled, if you pull a string down, it's going to straighten out. That's what's happening to your back. That's what happened. That's what causes flat back essentially. And a flat back can either be flat, you'll see it's flat, or you'll see it's flat but diagonal. And then in that instance, that restricts the blood flow to the pelvic region, which is the reproductive system is usually there. And that is what causes the nutritional deficiencies and ultimately conditions or diseases arise from that. So I just wanted to clear that up a little bit, but that's your test that you can do on yourself. A lot of reproductive conditions come from posterior pelvic tilt. Check if you have one.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Coach Gingy, what's your perspective on fatigue and addressing that from the mindfulness view?
Yeah, I would say that it's too much on, not enough off. Like if you don't sleep enough and you're awake too long, you're going to end up with chronic fatigue. If you're overthinking all the time, you're thinking, and you're not, meditating or taking time off, decompressing the mind, then you'll have mental fatigue. If your emotions are always really high, well, then you're going to end up having emotional fatigue. So it's kind of like an imbalance, if you will, of on and versus off. So like a lot of people I work with, they'll get overwhelmed pretty easily. And what I find most people are let's see, how can I put this? I'll say that they have too many things on the back burner mentally. They have too many to-do lists and too many, concerns and projections about the future and plans and all this stuff that they burn themselves out mentally, and then they just feel fatigued all the time. I don't know what's going on. So I would, I would get them out of what I would call magic bullet thinking, or what the magic fix is. Say, how do I get rid of this? Because that's what doctors tell you. Here's the magic bullet for your headaches, some Tylenol. And then you take these drugs and it just makes you unaware of the problem as opposed to fixing the problem. And in the same situation, a lot of people will move from trying this nutrient or this exercise or this type of water or this type of whatever. And they're bouncing from magic fix to magic fix. And they're kind of burning themselves out there, kind of starting to feel exhausted. Like, well, I've tried everything. How do I fix my problem? nothing's working. It's because they're doing what Ryan was saying, and it's fragmented. And that fragmentation and all that stuff can lead to overwhelm and fatigue in all kinds of different ways. So if I were to make any recommendation, it'd be like get in a program that actually works like this, but also stop all of the excess activity. You'll notice that your habits and your patterns are the reasons why you have fatigue. And if you shift those, you rest more, then you should be less fatigued. And it's the same thing as Sean was saying. Oh, fatigued muscle, well, just give it what it's asking for, because that's what it is. It's asking for rest. Fatigue is a way of the subconscious mind asking for a break.
Thank you for that. Coach Ryan, what's your take on fatigue on the nutritional perspective of things?
Well, normally I would jump right to thyroid function because thyroid problems, especially hypothyroid, is probably the most underdiagnosed and underappreciated problem out there. It's the hidden epidemic. But in this case, with the man asking this, we know him because he's a member. So most things that generally apply about fatigue will not apply to him because his problems stem from a head injury several years ago. And he's a very difficult case in the sense that he has trouble with a lot of different supplements and herbs and foods, where he's reacting to a lot of different things. And when this happens, it automatically makes you a tricky case. But I mean, it would just make me double down that nutrient deficiencies are indeed the biggest part of the problem here. But also knowing him personally, since he is once again a member, I do know that this is basically taken over his life. So I would lean towards the mindfulness being incredibly important for him. And I do hope he's taking advantage of it within the membership, especially with Gingy's classes now. Because, and I don't blame him for this, if you have a serious problem and your life has been effectively ruined in a large way, being obsessed with the solution is rational. But it can get to a point where the stress from trying to figure out the problem and trying to, do literally everything and buy every single product out there that's available, that stress can ruin the progress or at least get in the way of it. So I think it's both. I think it's massive nutrient deficiency across the board for him specifically. Not necessarily a thyroid problem because we've seen his blood work, and someone here on the socials said, do a parasite cleanse. I don't really think so either. We've seen his he's had a comprehensive analysis for it, and I doesn't warrant it to me. But whatever, you can do a parasite cleanse, sure. I don't think that'll fix his problem. I think he needs to do the mindfulness training, but also understand that since he's sensitive to so many things, he may have to put up with some semi-significant discomfort for a little while topping those nutrients up because a lot, and there's several people like him. These are the most difficult cases who have trouble taking supplements and eating different foods. They react to everything. And so they'll react once and stop. Right. Whereas a lot of times you've got to get through it. There are quite a few nutrients where if you're very, very low, the response from putting them back in the body can be extreme and can be pretty uncomfortable. But if you stop, you're never going to top back up. So that's part mental, right? It's understanding and accepting that this is going to cause some discomfort, but I need to get through that to top the body up so I can return to normal function. And we have seen some progress with him. It's not that there hasn't been zero progress, but I think the mindfulness is one of the things he needs the most here, and not letting it consume his mind completely. Because even though it's a noble goal to want to, devote all your energy to healing, it can be so much stress that it can get in the way of it.
Thank you for that, Ryan. We'll take one more question and then wrap up for the day. Actually, it's kind of a two-part. We've got two people on here. Would you please address a low blood pressure? Is salt best for this? And there's another one opposite to that. Would you please address high blood pressure? What to do? So we'll just kind of link them together since we're talking about blood pressure. Coach Sean, any insights on the postural perspective for high and low blood pressure? Or should we pass that on to Coach Gingy or Ryan?
Yeah, it's just a real quick thing. I mean, kind of what I've been saying before. It's just the posture is not correct at all. And most of the time we attribute low blood pressure or high blood pressure to just the heart. They're like, oh yeah, my heart is just messed up. Don't know why. But it's a full body condition. If there's a impingement, if there's like, you can think of like a dam in a river or something like that. If there's an impingement farther down the line, wouldn't that make sense for the heart to try to push to get past that impingement and try to get blood into that other area? So it has to raise the blood pressure. But the same thing with the lower blood pressure, it could just mean that there's not enough activity. Because to a degree, yes, your heart pumps, but when there's so many impingements and there's such little activity to where you're not functioning like an everyday, doing a lot, period, every day, um, that can cause low blood pressure. So it's just one, your activity, but it's two, where are your postural dysfunctions? If you don't know where your postural dysfunctions, that's what we help you understand and then address them. Because if you just go through life with these impingements, they're going to get worse. They're not going to get better. The muscles are going to lock, and then you're going to be in a position where you're 70, 80, 60, and you're in this extreme disposition. And it's going to take even more time to kind of reverse all of that because a theme is that we don't think it takes too long. It won't take the same amount of time that it took. Like you can be in pain or you can take about 30 or 40 years to develop a condition. It's not going to take the same amount of time, but you need to give your body time to reverse that. And the longer you wait, the longer you'll have to put in work to reverse that dysfunction. So I think it's just an overall body dysfunction.
Thank you for sharing. Coach Gingy, passing it over to you from a mindfulness perspective.
Thank you, Karen. I would say imagine it like an analogy of a hose that's got water rushing through it. What happens if you squeeze the hose? The pressure goes up. And so any type of tension or clinging, like this is where mindfulness is very, very important because you can very easily get stressed out or overthink or fatigued or something, and the body will compensate by stiffening up. And you've got muscles that wrap around your arteries that do the same thing, and those can very easily tighten the hose, if you will, and have blood pressure go up. I know there's tons of nutrients. I'm sure Ryan's about to get into that too, but foregoing any type of nutrition and posture stuff, if it was just a mindfulness issue, I'd say you're holding on to something and you have some type of tension, chronic tension happening all the time. And I would wonder where that's coming from. What type of habits and patterns are creating tension, and what type of thoughts are you bracing yourself with? What type of beliefs have you taken in, and really assessing the mental and emotional state of you to figure out you know if it is the cause of your tension or not. Now, if you're just living a blissed out life and stuff and nothing bothers you, well, it's probably not going to be a mindfulness issue, but I would wager that there is a combo effect going on here. I bet you it's a certain degree mindfulness and a certain degree the other two macros.
Thank you for that. Passing it over to Coach Ryan for the nutrition perspective.
Well, the first thing I would point out is that many different drugs can cause low blood pressure, right? So the first question was about low blood pressure, just saying that if you're on any other drugs, it's worth Googling those drugs. Can this drug cause low blood pressure? Because most of the time in practice, that's what we see. Never had this problem, never connected it with that antidepressant or whatever it is. Many different drugs can cause it. So just consider that. And then hypothyroidism, right? The low blood pressure is usually associated with something else that's low. Low blood sugar, low thyroid function. On another one of the socials, another person asked, what about postprandial hypotension? Postprandial means after eating. So low blood pressure after eating. I would assume that they also have low blood sugar after eating. Not 100% that that's going to be true, but that would be my absolute first assumption, which means they have multiple nutrients that they are missing to not process sugar properly. They're crashing too quickly. Body's overcompensating with too much insulin, and it's dropping it down too quickly, and so the blood pressure is going down with it. But if it's happening more or less all the time, then hypothyroid is going to be the top assumption, which is a multiple nutrient deficiency. You need tons of different nutrients for your thyroid, and fixing a thyroid or metabolic problem tends to be a little bit more complicated than the average problem. But we deal with it a lot. You know, a lot of people with a lot of different chronic problems actually have hypothyroid at the root of all that. We're here talking about root causes. Well, thyroid problem is one of the big, huge ones, but there's deeper than that. Obviously, there's nutrient deficiencies and food habits and so on that cause hypothyroidism. Hyperthyroidism is obviously much more common, and it's also a metabolic problem. It's usually considered just part of the metabolic syndrome, along with diabetes and obesity and high blood cholesterol and all that stuff. So when you reverse the cause of those problems, the underlying metabolic dysfunction, blood pressure usually comes along right along with it. And yes, Gingy mentioned there are many nutrients involved, basically all the nutrients that you need for muscle function in general. And this person was asking about salt for low blood pressure. Salt, both sodium and chloride, are electrolytes. You need both of them for muscle function. Absolutely, yes. You also need all the other electrolytes, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and many others. You need a lot of nutrients, all the amino acids. You need all them for muscle function. Blood pressure is a muscle problem because muscles are what actually squeeze at the end of the vascular junctions there to keep pushing it along. And of course, the heart itself. But yeah, high blood pressure is much more common. It's usually just part of the metabolic syndrome. And even people with hypothyroidism can have high blood pressure, by the way. It's not always low. Low is quite rare. Either way, both of those things, thyroid is a metabolic problem. So it's in the metabolic category. We'd fix that root, which is multiple possible nutrient deficiencies, dozens of them. And bad food choices and drugs are a possibility as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Ryan. We've come to a close. We're going to have to wrap up here, but if you're just joining us or watch this for the first time, or maybe you haven't got started with us yet, and you're wondering, how do I start? Your best bet would be to get one of Dr. Reese's books. Peace Over Pain is a great one to start with. It really gives you the overall perspective of head to toe healing. Or if you want more information about the medical system, this red book is a great place to start too. And those can all be found on drkevinreese.com, or send us a DM and we'd be happy to interact with you, answer questions that you may have. We'd love to help you along your health journey. So thank you so much for spending your day with us. Whether you're watching now or you're doing this in a replay, we're really thankful that you joined us today, and we will see you again next week, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much.